Welcome to the next episode of my RANS S-21 build. In this episode, I'm going to be working on installing a beacon in the tip of the vertical fin. I've done a lot of research on beacons. I didn't want what I have, for instance, in my Cessna. I have a wheel on that one. It's a great beacon. They're nice and bright. Problem is, it's just really large. It's about 2.5 inches in diameter and like 3 or 4 inches tall. I just didn't want anything substantial like that on the S-21. So I found a product called a MicroMax by Aveo Engineering, and it's a really small micro-sized beacon. It's about 1.25 inches in diameter, I think, and maybe about 3/8 of an inch thick. It's nice and compact. It's very bright. It's red, LED, of course, and so I went with one of those. And what I need to do, though, is I need to find a way to mount that to the vertical fin tip. Now I'm running the Aerosport fiberglass vertical fin tip. This could probably apply just the same to the ABS plastic fin tip from RANS. The principles that I'm going to do here are the same. But what I do is I mold in a mount for that beacon, and that's what we're going to see in this episode here.
Using my calipers, took some measurements of the unit here. Effectively what I'm making, this is the rubber gasket for it. I'm just making something like this, but I'm going to make it out of probably 3/16 inch or maybe 1/4 inch thick fiberglass G10 plate. So I drew it up. As you can see, it's essentially just this piece. And this is what I'll bond to the top of the fiberglass tip. I had some problems with audio on these clips showing the CNC machine, so I'm just going to dub this in after in editing here. But here's where I'm showing the material I'm going to be cutting this from. This is a 1/4 inch thick fiberglass G10 plate. I use this a lot on some of my other stuff for my business. Here I'm showing the tool path, and I'm getting ready to zero out the machine and get this cut. And here I've got the machine running and popping the holes in this part here. It's real easy work with the CNC router. Just pops out this part. Well, here's the part after running it on the CNC. Nice little part. What I'll do now is go ahead and tap these holes to M3. These were machined undersize to 2.3 millimeters, which is what I want to do. That's the pilot hole for a 3mm tap. So I'll get these tapped. And yes, you can tap directly into fiberglass plate. The threads will be plenty strong for this application. Check the fit here. So I've fished my wires through, put the gasket in place there. And now the piece I just machined, it's a perfect fit. So this is what will stick up above the tip. Just a 1/4 inch for this mounting plate and the beacon itself. And I'll run some stainless M3 screws through here into the plate. I've marked the tip where I would like this beacon to go. Happens to be right at about the apex of the curve, and it's about halfway down from the width of the vertical stabilizer. The tip here and the back of the vertical stabilizer here, that apex just happens to run right about that midpoint, so I think it'll be a nice symmetrical look there. And what I'll do is I'll just bond this temporarily with some CA just to hold this in place. And then what I'll do is I'll come in with some epoxy and micro balloons and make a filleting compound and come in here and glue it to the tip and create a fillet all the way around with the epoxy. And I should end up with a nice blended transition from the fiberglass tip to the mounting plate for the beacon. Once I do all that and I'm satisfied, I'll come in here and cut out this opening. I have to cut it out just a little bit to get it to fit in there. And at that point, I will have mounted my beacon into the vertical stabilizer tip. I've prepared the fiberglass tip by sanding down with some 60 grit to get all the way down to the fiberglass and get rid of the primer. And this is where I'll center this up, and I'll hit it with a little CA glue and then I'll start working on the fillet. Well, I've got all my materials here. I'm ready to do this. I'm going to use some West Systems G-Flex epoxy. It's mixed 50%, 1:1. So I'll weigh some out of part A. I'll finish in my part B. Then I'm going to mix in some micro balloons, and I'll do a little bit of graphite powder, mostly just for color. Adds a little strength too. And then I've got some solvent here that I'll use with my glove for filleting. So let's start out by mixing. Here's my part A. I'll probably do about 60 grams, 61 grams. So this will bring me to 122. Good enough, 122.8, I'll take it. Mix in my micro balloons. Looking for a really thick paste-like consistency. So I'm gonna be adding quite a bit of micro balloons here. Mix in some graphite. That'll give me a nice dark gray, almost black color. See, we're starting to get a paste-like consistency. That's exactly what I want. I don't want it to run when I squeeze it in there in the joint. I want it to just kind of sit there. I want to really get it down in the corner there. Make sure I get a good bond. I'm not worried about making a mess right now. I am trying to avoid the top. I don't want to have to sand that if I don't have to. I got about 45 minutes of work time with this G-Flex epoxy. Plenty of time. I'll probably have to come in and do a second round after this cures, and I sand it down. Get my finger wet with it and start working this in. Okay, I'm gonna let that be. It looks messy now, but I'm gonna call that good for now. It's gonna give me a good start. I'm gonna let this cure, and then I'll slowly start shaping it. Got it sitting outside. I'm gonna expose it to the sunlight here, just get a little bit of heat on it. Maybe kick it off a little quicker. But that looks pretty good. That'll clean up nicely. Here's what I've come up with after sanding that and blending and filling and sanding again. It's pretty good. I'll prime it and that'll really show me where I'm at with it. I did add another spacer, another 1/4 inches to the top of that. Initially because I didn't want to round over the edge of the original disc as I was shaping this, but then I started to kind of like that it protruded up just a little bit more. That's just screwed on right now. I can take that off. So I can either add that spacer in with the light if I'd like, or take it out. I don't know. We'll see. Well, here it is. After a lot of filling, sanding, priming, and repeating that about 3 different times, I've got it mostly done. I went ahead and put the light on here just to kind of see what it looks like.
I've got one more round of filling and priming to go yet, but this turned out great. It's nice, low profile. This beacon's only 1 3/8 OD. It only stands about 3/4 inch above the top surface here to the top of the light. Just really happy with how this looks. I wasn't really fond of the big, in fact, let's look at my wheeling here. This is what you're gonna find on most airplanes. These big honking things. About a 3-inch diameter, stands up about 3 inches. Now, they're bright. There's a lot of LEDs there, so you do get that out of it. But this thing's pretty damn bright. I can't look at it with my bare eyes. It's blinding. So I think for this purpose, it's gonna be perfect. The primer I used was this High Solids Heavy Body High Build Primer. It's a 2K Finish 1 by Acme, and it's got a 4-to-1 catalyst mix. It's a real good primer for building up on composite work where there's just little inconsistencies. I gotta do one more coat yet after I do a little bit of filling here, but man, this just looks fantastic. Let's take a look at it up on the vertical. Check that out. You hardly even know it's there. Love it.